Hi, everyone. This is Johari Shuck with Your Black Education. And we have conversations with educators from across the country who really want to share their knowledge and expertise to help educate our Black children. So today we have as our guest Mr. Bryan Robertson, and he's an educator that's based in Texas. And he's going to talk to us today not just about how he got into the field of education as a Black male, because I think that's important for us to talk about, but he's also going to talk about the importance of the culture of a school on the academic achievement of our children. So, thank you very much for joining us today. How are you, Bryan?
Thank you. I'm doing great. Doing great.
Good, good. So, why don't we just start by? I'm always fascinated to hear how Black men end up becoming teachers because there's just not that many of you, and you're very needed in the school system. So, can you just kind of talk a little bit about how you ended up in this field?
Okay, so I ended up in education. My first major was actually psychology because I wanted to deal with studying the brain and what makes people tick. But my passion has always been to help others, and I end up kind of getting a major in within special education after looking at truly what I really wanted to give back, how I really wanted to affect what was going on. And that story goes back until when I was in elementary school. I was actually a candidate for special resources. They claimed that I had a slight form of dyslexia, a speech impediment, as well as they thought I had like ADHD at the time. And of course, those diagnoses weren't that popular then. So a lot of times they didn't really know exactly how to properly diagnosed. They just thought it was an issue and they wanted to change or have me outside the classroom. So I saw that it was a disproportionate amount of minorities being put in special ed. And even at that age, I felt something was wrong. But thank God that my parents were involved, my mom and dad, God fearing, and first and foremost, I want to definitely thank God for being there and really molding me. But my parents pushed that was not going to happen. I was not going to be in a resource classroom. I did not need to be separated from my peer group, and that I was going to be within a normal classroom every day. And through that, we went through a lot of arduous training. And when I say arduous, I mean a lot of how to identify and process the comprehension. And by going through those different type of trainings, I developed the mindset, the ability to acquire knowledge from a different perspective. And by doing that, it just gave me the edge that I needed to succeed. And as I fast forward some years, when I jumped into college, I was like, I got to give back. Now that I have this newfound knowledge, now that I've been blessed, to know the insight of what true education is, let me give back. Let me help out others. So I decided to go into special education, and from there I went on to get my master's in curriculum and instruction, where I can actually create the curriculum that's needed so these kids can excel. And I mean diverse. When I say diversity as far as curriculum, I mean having a multicultural curriculum that all individuals can benefit from.
Okay, that's really good. And I think that's a perfect segue into, the reason why we're talking today because, school culture encompasses a culturally responsive curriculum,
Yes.
diversity in your teachers, like it encompasses all those things. So why don't you tell us why you thought that this was an important topic for you to talk about today?
Oh man, well, multicultural education, having diversity within your classroom or culture within your school is so important. I mean, what you run into is you have a lot of individuals within the school system or structure that is, to me, I believe, is designed for it's a cookie cutter type of setup. And when you deal with multicultural individuals that have different upbringings, different culture backgrounds, different perspectives, different blueprints in life, it changes the mindset. It's a different perspective. And I mean, honestly, it's like looking at it from a lens through someone else's eyes. And I think that we have to be cognizant of educators, principals, any type of faculty member, understanding that not everyone's going to understand the curriculum through the lens of the person that's instructing. And what I mean by that, over 80% of educators are Caucasian females.
Mm-hmm.
So, and not saying that's necessarily a problem, but the issue is that you're limited to how you see things. And if you use your paradigm, your perspective, your blueprint of life to instruct on these African American young males, or females for that matter, or Hispanic males, it's you're gonna miss something. You're gonna miss something. And I'm not saying that anyone can't teach. I'm not saying you can't teach African American males or Hispanic males or females if you are of another ethnicity. But what you may want to do is understand them. Go in their areas, learn about them, learn what they like, what they trust, what they distrust, what the I would say the slang that they use, or the informal register that they use, because it's important to understand and build that relationship, and that's what I feel is key:
Mm-hmm.
developing a relationship with that student.
Mm-hmm. So, from your perspective, I mean, what does it look like in the different educational settings you've been in when teachers don't have that? Like, what are some of the things that you see that reflect a teacher that might not necessarily have that understanding that you're talking about is so important?
I see a lot of students being diagnosed falsely. I see a lot of students being removed from the classroom. And what you see is a breakdown within the classroom. It's almost like a cancer that spreads. Once that teacher loses the respect of the students, and teachers should want to gain the respect of the students. Honestly, I think it's reciprocated. What you give out is what you get back. So, but I think once you have that breakdown within the classroom, it really affects everything thus forward.
Mm-hmm.
So what is very important for those teachers is to really cultivate that relationship. And you do that through activities, engaging the student, and taking the time to know what's going on in their life. Before you bombard them with curriculum standards, the different TEKs, all the state standards. Talk to them and know what's going on within their day, or what went on yesterday with them. Maybe they may have dealt with some type of issue in the household that they're feeling a certain way about, and they're trying to kind of decompress from all that. And you're coming in and saying you need to do this equation, and they're not there. Before you just start treating them as if they're a robot, and asking them to fulfill a need of yours, maybe you want to see what's going on in their life, and maybe you can fulfill their needs. So I
Mm-hmm.
just feel that it's important for a relationship. Most, I think, out of most animals, out of most species on Earth, the human being within itself is the most codependent type of species out there,
Yeah.
and we need that human interaction. Studies have shown, babies without the mother interaction over time, they act a certain way. Young males without their father being there, they're going to behave a certain way. I believe, man, you teach what you know, but you replicate who you are, and
Mm-hmm.
that's meaning you have to live that life, show these kids what it is to model excellence, and then you may get that from them.
Mm-hmm. Now, what are some of the things that, I mean, you gave a couple of examples about what teachers can do to kind of get that understanding about their kids. But what are some of the other factors that contribute to why these teachers aren't getting this? I mean, shouldn't this be brought up during their teacher preparation programs? Do you see, that happening there? Or where do you think the breakdown is coming from?
I think the breakdown is coming from a rhetoric that is outdated. Outdated rhetoric that they teach throughout. I would call it student teaching. When you're working to get your to become a teacher within college, it's you learn these philosophies, you learn these theories, but none of those things work in the actual classroom.
Mm-hmm.
See, the thing is, we're not dealing with robots, and when you're dealing with human interaction, when you're dealing with that on a constant basis, you have to be innovative and intuitive.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't go based off of some doctor, some man that created some type of theory in the '80s and apply it to the kids in the new millennium. It's not going to work. So what we have to do is we have to be adaptable and be able to identify the needs of these children based off of economic background, based off of gender, based off of likes or dislikes, based off of perspective, and based off of, I always say this, but I say the blueprint of them. what is your blueprint? Because your blueprint is pretty much emotional, your emotional driving force.
Mm-hmm.
Based off of what you see and what you have learned and what you have developed throughout the years dictates how you act.
Mm-hmm.
So if you know this kid's history, you understand that why they may be acting a certain way. And to do that, it takes you to be involved. And I'm not saying you gotta listen to the music they're listening to. You have to, buy the clothes that they're buying. No, no, no. It doesn't. You still have your standard, but
Mm-hmm.
at the same time, just give enough and care enough to be involved with that student. Because once that student knows that you are invested in them, then they're going to give their all within your classroom.
Yeah, you're
And I
right.
think that's some of the problems we run into within that old school rhetoric is, you have unenthusiastic, mundane professors trying to teach, not all of them, but a lot of them trying to teach teachers how to be enthusiastic,
Mm-hmm.
sporadic, and exciting within their classroom. Well, that doesn't match.
Right.
So I think you run into that too.
Mm-hmm. Now, one of the things that I think is really important, and I don't know how many people know this, but either this year or last year was the first year where most of the children that started school, like at age 5, were children of color. So that means that, this is even more important because more and more the kids that are coming up are not going to be white kids. And so the teachers that are going through this program, through these preparation programs, they need to
Right.
understand that, right? So, like, so
Yes.
now teachers, they're not really like evaluated though on how well they interact with the kids, or are they? Are there ways to hold teachers accountable for this sort of thing?
Loosely, I say loosely based. They have evaluations that look on to interaction, but it's not specific to that.
Mm-hmm.
And you're losing a lot of students within the relationship. I mean that is, I cannot put an emphasis on that enough. I've
Mm-hmm.
seen it as an educator. I've seen it as a consultant. I've seen it just all around. It's the lack of a relationship, and even to care enough to want to know why is it that these kids have better relationships with their barbers, with their neighborhood, people within the neighborhood,
Mm-hmm.
people within their everyday lives, than what they have with their teachers. It's almost frightening because
Mm-hmm.
I state that because the majority of that child's day is spent in the classroom.
Right.
And even though they may switch from teacher to teacher, having 7 periods within the academic day, they still make that rotation daily.
Mm-hmm.
So at the end of the day, it's very important that these teachers kind of identify these students and really look at what is that I want from this student, and not just academics, but life skills. And now that's something that I'll probably get into that later on, but that's something my company and myself, I stand very, very we stand proud on that, is
Okay.
teaching students the life skills to be successful.
Mm-hmm. Now, and we will get to that because I think that's really important too. That's a whole nother category that helps kids succeed
Right.
in the classroom, right? So we'll definitely get there. But I wanted to ask you, when there aren't like this focus on multicultural competency with teachers and stuff like that, how do teachers or principals or whoever's in charge, what are ways that they can implement certain things to help their teachers be better in this? Like, do you see some principals trying to rectify this problem, or how does that play out?
They say they want to rectify the problem. What I run into a lot of times is these schools, these campuses, these districts, they pick these big names of people trying to teach them how to reach our young black males or our Hispanic males or our young black females, um, or minority students in general. And what you have is, yeah, you're teaching the teachers, but now it's up to those teachers to implement. And another problem I run into is I have no issue necessarily with a Caucasian male or Asian male or Indian male teaching teachers within the education system how to work with black males. But I will say this: sometimes it's best if you walk in the shoes of an
Mm-hmm.
individual before you start teaching people how to deal with those type of individuals. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that's another issue you run into. is you don't have enough black males getting involved to teach and model the certain behaviors, because if the kids feel as if they can't be like you or emulate you in some way, form, or fashion, you may lose them. Unfortunately, that's why back in the day, everyone said, "What, I want to be like Mike." They saw themselves being there. And, not too long. Well, not too long ago. Recently we just not took in a black president, and before that, you had kids that probably never thought that they could ever be a president if they were of African descent or Hispanic descent. But now it's possible. So you dream not because you see not. And these kids need to see a live model of what they want to become. And I think it will help them a little bit better. But what I run into with a lot of these schools, districts, and these campuses is that they have they're very narrow-minded as far as looking at bringing in different companies, different organizations to really help them in a sense of working with and galvanizing the true worth of these kids, because it's not taught to them.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, they're not taught their true self-worth. And if they have no self-worth, what can you expect from them?
Right.
So in other words, we're dealing with the symptoms, but we're not dealing with the true disease. And I think that we need to hire more people and get more organizations like myself and others that can go in and say, let me show you and teach you the methodical approach to being successful. Not just 1 + 1 is 2, not just, learn this history or this science theory, but let me teach you how to study correctly, how to take notes correctly. And it's okay to be cool and be this way, or be educated and be cool. And that's kind of, what I believe in modeling that.
Okay. Now, I want to go back to the whole issue of like school culture, because that was, that's really the major reason why we're talking today. So what are some of the things that are included in, the school culture? Like, what all does that encompass? We talked about a couple of things, but when you look at the big picture and how it affects our kids and their learning, like, what are the components of a school culture?
So school culture, to me, I definitely feel that it's been industrialized. And what I mean by that is school culture. In the 1800s, school was created to, honestly, to create workers to help within the economy and help businessmen, such as the Rockefellers and the Sam Waltons and those big names, Edison, Thomas Edison, and individuals like that, so they could develop their empire. So when you have big companies like that are developed, you need people to follow orders. Well, that's why you had education at that point. Now we fast forward to this time and era. We follow the same rhetoric, but times have changed. So how do we adapt? Like any business, you adapt to the need. And unfortunately, education to me hasn't adapted. So the culture of education at this point, I feel, is outdated. I feel that we are teaching kids a left brain curriculum. We have a left brain system, and almost like that schedule assembly line type of system that is not applicable to all types of our different learners. And the culture that teachers are told to do a certain type of job, and they have all these, like I said, tests, mandates, and they never are able to truly reach the students like they need to. So you have government officials, which are non-educators, making rules to educators who eventually are unable to educate the student population, because from top down they're giving directives that are completely controlling the whole culture of the education system. So if you understand, so what I mean, it's so much pressure that these teachers have on them. They don't have a lot of time to do a lot of things that I'm mentioning, and hence why we need to get more people involved in the school process so we could help out with this.
Now, you just said something that made me think about another question. Teachers, I think that teachers are they should be empowered to kind of make changes, I think. And you were talking about how we have all these non-educators making decisions that affect education. So, just out of curiosity, like, what is your take on that? Like, how do you think that we can kind of fix some of those problems? Do you think that teachers should try to get more into like the political scene or something? Like what? I'm just curious. Like, what do you think about that? Because I think that troubles me because you don't
Right.
have teachers going into the emergency room telling the doctor how to do his job. So
Right.
what do you think
You,
about that?
I think teachers should have more autonomy to make decisions, and they should be edified to a higher level. I mean, teachers are not edified in America, unfortunately. In some of the most successful countries like Finland, when it comes to education, teachers are treated as if they're lawyers or doctors. Why is it that we don't have that same type of prestige and mindset toward teachers here? I don't know, because we create the doctors and lawyers. So why is it that we don't get that type of praise when it comes to having that type of position? But I think educators do need to get involved with the political process. Educators need to speak out more on their needs, and as well as educators need to stay true to their purpose. I think over time they lose that interest. They lose that passion, that why that the reason why they chose that career, the reason why that they're working morning to noon, morning to nightfall to really create that curriculum that these students need. They lose it over time. They get worn out. It's so much that's on teachers, and it takes a teacher to be. It takes to be in that position to really know, because a lot of people don't understand how much they put on teachers. It's almost like you're doing paperwork. You're a counselor. This is all in one. You're a motivator. Sometimes you got to be a doctor. And this is all to these students that come to you, lacking some of those necessities that they should get from home. They come to you and they're looking like, look, I need this, I need that, and the system is telling you, well, you better get them to pass to this level, or you are failing as a teacher. That's a lot of pressure. So if we take some of that pressure away, I think teachers can do their job better, but also edify their position, because the mind is powerful. And I think if you feel as if you're a king or queen, you're going to act as such. But how can we expect these kids to respect teachers when teachers don't respect themselves?
Right, right. So how do you go about, like, if you were to talk to like a principal or something, how does someone in charge go about changing the culture at their school so that all the children have a chance to achieve to their maximum potential?
I would say you would edify every position, all the way from the principal to assistant principal to the curriculum directors to the teachers to the janitors and so forth, nurses, whoever's in that system. Edify them, allow them to know how valuable they are, and then again give them the autonomy to make decisions so they can feel valuable within that process. I think when you give people certain standards and expectations, they will meet that. And you don't want to have what you call the flea mindset, and the whole story about the flea mindset is that fleas have an innate ability to jump about 10 inches, but if you put them in a 7-inch jar, and over time, you'll hear a lot of clicks, click, click, because all the fleas are jumping up and down. Well, over time, eventually you hear nothing. And then as you look at the jar, you'll see that these fleas are only jumping about 6 inches, just enough underneath that 7-inch jar. Well, when these fleas have babies, what do these babies do? The babies start to jump just at 6 inches as well, following what mom and daddy flea are doing. From there, you unscrew the jar, and you'll notice that not one flea ever jumps out. Why? Because they've been conditioned. What we have is an education system of teachers being conditioned, principals being conditioned, and it's almost toxic as far as how it permeates within the school culture, pretty much limiting the mindset of what these individuals within such powerful roles, what they can do, limiting them to think only as if they can get by and do just enough. So now teachers are ready for happy hour now. Instead of planning, they're waiting for 5 o'clock p.m. And they say, oh, you have restaurants are zoned that already know the rush that's going to come in on Fridays. So my thing is, just as happy as you are for a Friday, and this is, I don't want to sound trite or sound like it's unrealistic, but you should be that happy for that Monday. Why? Because you're going back to make a difference. You're getting back out there. So what happened to that? And I think if the principals make that school culture conducive for teachers to feel that way.
Mm-hmm.
Make them feel powerful, but give them the tools to do it as well. And that requires leadership, which I think education lacks. It lacks a form. I think a lot of people that work don't have the right leadership. And how can you lead others when you can't lead yourself?
Right.
So yeah. So all the way from top down, we have to start edifying positions. We need to instill in them the true ability that they have, and we need to give them the tools to be successful. And I think you'll start changing the culture
Mm-hmm.
with
Now,
that.
now, what impact does culture have on kids? Like, give specific examples of how our kids' achievement can be impacted by a culture that's more conducive to their development.
Wow. So how the culture can really impact on their development and what they do. So I would say, even from a geographical standpoint, from an economical standpoint, these are all major. These play major roles in the development of a child. You just think, even from if you, I believe that a lot of academic tests can be biased
Mm-hmm.
toward those elements. And if our children are born, well, let me put this on the table for one. Education is usually designed toward a middle class European descent
Right.
girl, and
Mm-hmm.
that's based off of how you want them to sit, how you want them to be content with certain elements, and how you want them to behave. And it's not really, and not even looking at just race, just gender wise, it's biased. Little boys are more rambunctious and more tactile and kinesthetic learners, so
Mm-hmm.
we have to implement that. But culturally, these are all elements that affect the classroom. So if you have, for example, I know myself. I was a very rambunctious little kid, man. I finished the assignments early. I was witty. I was charismatic, and I was always a class clown because I was done with the work. And I always wanted to make people laugh and have a really have a good time within the classroom setting. Now, if the teacher wanted me to sit down and do nothing but be quiet and do my work, then that's impeding on my natural ability. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what you run into within education a lot of times is behave like I should, which is sit down, do your work, and make the best out of it, and you better enjoy it. Or you don't have to enjoy it, just do it. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to grade it. That's not conducive for growth. And I
Yeah.
think you run into that a lot within the culture, especially our young black males who I do feel are more kinesthetic and tactile learners.
Mm-hmm.
I used to beat on my desk all the time, and I used to, and the teachers, thought I had a problem, not knowing that when I grew up I was going to be a drummer. So I had rhythms going in my head because that's who I was entitled to be. That's who God made me to be. So why is that necessarily a problem? Groom that. So what I would do is say, after you're done, we'll have a little pad or something that you can beat on, and that's going to be your little section. That's going to be where you go after you finish your work. Now you're getting an incentive.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of just being able to. You have to be able to manipulate the classroom and make it conducive for different cultures because people have different backgrounds.
Yeah.
Now that may be something different with Hispanic male and females within the classroom that you can give them something that's based off of their culture and what they experience and implement, but it takes you doing the work. And a lot of
Mm-hmm.
teachers don't want to do the work, which means you're gonna have to research some of that.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I definitely believe that though.
Yeah, and you know what? That reminds me of something. I don't know if you saw this, but there was like this clip going around social media, and it showed like teachers in classrooms, and like it was white women teachers in these classes filled with black and brown babies, and it was very like military and very restrictive, and it was so
Yes.
disturbing to see it. It was just like,
Wow.
what does this do to kids? Like, what does this do in the minds of kids when you're treating them in a way that doesn't
Oh,
edify them? You know what I'm saying?
that's a perfect yes, yes, yes. I've actually done a lot of research on that, and what I've identified is you have something called neuroassociation. This is what you associate as far as positivity or negativity,
Mm-hmm.
and neuroassociation will be something like hearing a good song and you associate it with feeling happy. It's that simple. Now, just like you have that effect, you have the adverse effect when it comes to, for example, something like education. It's stated by third grade, if a student's not reading from by third to fourth grade, if they're not reading on their grade level, they're building a jail cell for them. That's scary because majority throughout that process, they're dealing with teachers that look nothing like them, that had no experience like them.
Mm-hmm.
So what you have is you have these young black males in this system. they're being reprimanded throughout, being told no, getting the red marks all through their paper. Well, what do you think that conditions them to believe?
Right.
For one, it teaches them that they're incompetent or they can't do well within school, and it also gives them the mindset that why bother? See, it's something that goes on within that third, fourth, fifth grade time span where by the time they get to middle school, they don't know how to act. Yeah. We have to tame them at second, third grade and instill in them their self-worth. Mm-hmm. But they're not taught that. It's instill in them what they're truly capable of doing and being and allowing them to feel comfortable within who they are. Because I think the only time you really have a problem is when you're trying to make someone be something that they're not.
Right.
So, and it's a story of this young lady, and I'll tell you the name after I give you a little story. This young lady who moved around in the classroom a lot, and what they did was they brought her. And this was before, again, you had all these diagnoses. They brought her into many psychologists to identify what was going on with her. Mm-hmm. And she was in one psychologist's room, and the psychologist was talking to the mom, and he said, hey, sweetie, can you go wait? And he said that to the daughter, the young girl, the young lady. Can you wait in the waiting room while I finish talking to your mom to discuss what we're going to do to help you out? Mm-hmm. And she went into the waiting room, and he had some music playing, some waiting music, I guess, that elevator music in the waiting room. And the psychologist told the mom, he said, look out there. You see she's dancing? He said, your daughter doesn't have a problem. She learns through music. And this young lady I'm talking about is Julian Lynn, the choreographer for Cats. And that name right there, she's built her own school, and she's over, making over millions of dollars doing choreography and doing something that she loved. That if it was in this day and age, someone may have told her to send her to the resource room. Yeah. Send her to special education because she has a problem. Mm-hmm. Someone identified something in this young girl to say she's not handicapped. She doesn't have any mental issues or impairments. This young lady learns through movement and music. So and that's just one example. Mm-hmm. How many of our kids are falsely being sent to special education, which is a moneymaker? $12,000 per pupil in special education. So it behooves schools to make kids special needs because they get paid. Unfortunately, it's at the price of our kids, because that's the majority of special education. So these kids that are gifted, identify their gifts and work with them. But again, it takes you to understand that. Right. I think the biggest dichotomy between two individuals is the young black male and the European female. Reason why? Because not too long ago, you had the Emmett Till. Not too long ago, you had to tip your hat and walk on the side when a young lady was walking on the road. Mm-hmm. So someone that doesn't understand you, that could fear you, and I'm not saying it's all of them, because I've seen some great Caucasian teachers out there that will really get in there and work with these students. But you do have a lot that fear, and they fear out of not understanding. Right. And based off of that mindset, if, again, neural association, if I identify blacks or African Americans, which represent every negative thing I see from the media, then I'm already going to have a predetermined mindset when that kid walks in that he subconsciously, not even purpose, right. Not even purposely, but subconsciously, I'm going to have a mindset that this kid is only going to be limited to this level. I don't expect him to do this, and I'm okay with him doing this. Mm-hmm. And this is what happens, and it's a cycle.
Yeah. You're right, and I'll give an example too, because I have an 8-year-old. Well, he's 9 now, but okay. I used to go and watch his class, his third grade class, and his teacher was a young white woman, and there were a good diverse amount of kids. But one day we were sitting in the library, and she called out every single kid that was like being a little bit disruptive, in her opinion. So as she's picking kids one by one and telling them to get off the rug where the librarian was reading them a book, I look up and it's all the black and brown kids that are off of the rug. And then she sends the kids out of the class to write the teacher, the librarian, a note to apologize for why they were, being disruptive. That bothered me so much, and I didn't even say anything about it. And I'm an educator, and I feel some kind of way myself because I didn't say anything about it. But can you speak to like how parents can kind of have an impact on either the school culture or the way that their kids are being educated.
Yes, yes. Know what's going on in your child's life. No, it's not. It's nothing but a phone call away. I don't think parents realize how much they can do. Your kid can't even be admitted to special education unless you give the go ahead. Now, that also is another story on how some parents do that to get paid too. But parents being involved is crucial. Now, I'm gonna be honest, and a lot of times people don't want to go here with the breakdown of the black household, the black family. But you have almost over 70% of women that have babies out of wedlock. That's scary. If you want to destroy a culture, you take the man out the household. Well, since slavery, we've had that done. And now we're here in this day and age where we still don't have men in the roles that they need to play. And if they are around, sometimes they're childish and they're boyish. We need men to stand up. We need men to grow up, and we need men to start raising their kids and being there. Because the system is only taking over because the parents are not allowing, the parents are allowing the system to take over. Excuse me. I mean, they have the ability to say something. And in a month, I'm gonna have a 2-year-old. Brendan, I love him to death. That's my little son, my first son. And I can tell you this, that I'm going to be all over that school. But I'm going to make sure, because I don't expect them to understand how my young black son is going to act and behave in the classroom. He's all over the place now. But when I say he's a genius, he's a genius. Like, his baby is very smart, but he's all over the place. And that's because his mind, that's what I call multitasking. That's a gift that business entrepreneurs have.
Right.
And so what do? Do we cultivate this? Or we shut it down early and say sit in a corner and don't move unless you're told to. I have a problem with that.
Yeah.
And again, that's a system, that's a rhetoric that comes from individuals that may be within, like I said, within the education system, or even an individual teacher that may have that mindset of that's the way I believe it should be done, so I'm going to impose that on you. And I have a problem with that because something has to change. Because we're losing this fight within education. It's a reason why African Americans are on the lowest academic testing, on academic grades, on every type of aptitude test. We're almost the lowest. And we're competent, if not more. So why is it that we're falling behind? The household. I think first is the household. We got to start getting parents back together. We got to start building that household that God intended us to have. I believe in that. And I think when you take that away, you open up room. And now you have it where these young men are raising each other. They allow gangs to raise them. They yearn for a male companion. So what they want to do is just be cool. And unfortunately, we can't allow the media to show what a real man is, especially a black man at that, because the only thing they have is holding a basketball or playing some type of sport or rapping some type of lyric. And we all know there's so much more to that, but that's what they see. So we have to be there. So again, I just believe that you're limited to who's ever in charge of that classroom. You're limited to their perception of what they feel you are. Because at the end of the day, we don't think of ourselves as who we think we are. We don't think of ourselves of what other people think we are, but we think of ourselves of what we think people think we are. So if that teacher thinks I'm a certain way, guess what? I'm going to see myself through the eyes or through the lens of that teacher. Now her limited belief of me becomes my limited belief.
Exactly. You're right. And I think that a lot of all these things work together. And I think that's part of the issue too, is that a lot of white teachers and some black teachers too, because not all black teachers get where these kids are coming from. So it's not just them, but I don't think they realize how long term of an impact it can have. You know what I'm saying? Because of the dynamics of our culture and our history, they don't understand that. So when you were just saying, when a kid internalizes, this teacher's perception of him, that's turning him off to school probably too. And then it'll build off of each other. And then you might have a kid that doesn't care about school and then doesn't, attempt to go further with it. And then that causes so many more other problems. You know what I'm saying? So education for us is the key to everything, more so I feel than other cultures. I mean, that's just my opinion. But there's just so many things that can go wrong when our kids are turned off, in the school setting.
Exactly.
So I want to transition because you were talking about basically that we're not any less intelligent than anybody else.
Yes.
And so I think that that's where the piece gets missing of what is it that we're not addressing. And you were talking about you have a company that helps kids, with life skills and things like that.
Yes.
Self awareness. I'm assuming things that help
Right.
edify them to help make up for that other stuff that they're not getting. So can you talk a
Yes.
little bit more about what it is that you're doing and how that you see that helping and fitting into the equation of everything that you're doing?
Okay, thank you. I gladly will. And my company is called Eduvention. Eduvention, and the name came from education and intervention, and fusing those words together. So Eduvention and it's called Eduvention Mentoring and Consulting. We mentor students and we also consult teachers on some of the very topics we're talking about. And one of the big things that we do is we do workshops. We train teachers on multicultural education, relating to the students, cultivating that relationship that's needed for success. But we also train kids, most importantly, and this is the core of the business, we train students on how to use those life skills to aid them in academics and beyond. And by doing that, I mean, I teach, my background comes from motivational speaking, and I've been all around the Houston area, and Texas for that matter, speaking at different colleges and high schools. And one thing that I use is those life skills that we take for granted. We know goal setting, but do we know how to properly set a goal? If we did, then why do we have New Year's resolutions every year? We have the same New Year's resolution. I want to lose 5 pounds for 2009. I'm gonna be fine for 2009. I'm gonna win 2010. We even come with little slogans and rhymes to make ourselves feel better. But obviously, we're not accomplishing those goals. To get different results, you have to change your habits. And to change your habits, you must have aim and have focus and make a distinctive decision. When you look at the word decision, it means to cut off. Decidere is the Greek Latin word that represents decision, to cut off. That means that you no longer will allow your past to impede on what you want to do in your future. So when I say goal setting, we do quantitative and qualitative goal setting. We do self-advocacy. We do two-way communication. What we do is within that, I meet with the students an hour to 2 hours a week, and we teach them. But we don't only just teach them. We do the application process. So we teach them. We do fun activities with them. We mentor them, but we also do. You're gonna apply it now. They do interviewing skills. They learn financial literacy. If you know how to play fantasy football, then you can play the stock market. It's that simple.
Right.
Why are we not teaching our kids that?
Exactly.
Why are we allowing them to play these games while you have other groups that are controlling the games, making big money,
right,
and they're learning a whole nother rhetoric? Let's train our kids the system. So financial literacy, how to select the right college that's applicable to your desires and your major you're looking for. Just don't go to UT or Texas A&M just because it sounds good or
right.
they have good colors. Yes. or the football team plays very well. No, So I have a 2-year curriculum I wrote. 2 years that we build each step of the way, and time management. That's another key one. You demand your time. Don't let your time demand you.
Right.
First thing you do waking up in the morning should not be email or Facebook. You set the task for your day from top to low. So it's a system. See, the greatest people, and I say greatest, excuse me, I mean some of your most prosperous, prestigious individuals had mentors, not education. Education didn't become big until mid 1800s to later on early 1900s. You had people that were millionaires way before that. Right. And if you look at some of your millionaires now, majority of them don't have college degrees. I'm not saying don't go to college, but what I'm saying is true education is not what you learn in a system. Education where you can pick up a book and learn it, right, and comprehend it and apply it to your everyday life. So what we do is we teach them the steps to being successful as far as your everyday life. This is going to keep you, and this is going to get, and we tell schools because schools are about numbers. That's all they worry about. They don't worry about the kids, they worry about the numbers. So you have schools that we tell them we're going to help your conduct infractions. We're going to help your grades because based off of the skills we teach them, they're going to be more apt to do well in school because they're going to implement it.
Right.
And the way we really get them and we galvanize that is through building that relationship. Then having relevance to what we do because they see us, they relate, they say we know, we can do all the little dances that they do, we know all of it, we know all of that, but we do that because it builds that rapport, and then you can increase the rigor. Now you can make things challenging, and even if they don't want to do it for themselves, they're going to love you that much, they will love you that much that they're going to work hard just to say, look what I did. And you know what, I will celebrate. If you come from a 10 to a 22 as far as a grade, we're going to celebrate that. Because you 11, 12 more points higher? Right. Let's celebrate that because you made a difference. Now let's bring it up this much more. You see, so I just think that cultivating that relationship, teaching those life skills, allowing them to have the autonomy to be successful within their own gifts is going to give them the ability to be great. So that's what we do with the Eduvention, and I love it that we are able to do that.
That's awesome. That is really good. And I feel like, I didn't even realize we've been talking so long because I can go on and on because I think like this is something that's important to talk about, not just, school culture and all that, but how to help our kids be more successful. And it sounds like you're doing that in a lot of different ways. So maybe we can talk again at a later time to just kind of get more into the things that you have done and come up with to make a difference for the kids in Houston.
Awesome.
So I appreciate your time today, and look forward to talking to you down the line.
Sounds excellent. Can I tell people where to meet to find out my information?
Please do. Yes, please do.
Yes. Okay. So if anyone's inquiring getting Eduvention within your school, you can go to www.eduvention.net. Okay. And Eduvention spelled EDUVENTION. So please come check the website out. You can also look at our, let's see, I think we have our Facebook page also, which is at Eduvention. So you can just go on Facebook and type in Eduvention. You'll be able to find us there as well. And our Twitter would also be Eduvention. Twitter's at Bryan Eduvention, which is BRYAN Eduvention, EDUVENTION. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a good rest of your night.
I will. You too.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.